Hey folks, hope you all are doing well. I am Karan Bandal from Econosite, your weekly economic wrap from India and around the world. So let's get started with the two democracies. India-US partnership. India-US ties have been getting stronger and deeper since the early 2000s. Just recently, Biden administration's point person for South Asia stated that the US wants to be part of New Delhi's economic miracle. So what is this economic miracle he's talking about? Despite the issues that a noisy democracy and an inefficient bureaucracy bring, India has made impressive economic strides since the reforms of the early 1990s. Starting at a mere $270 billion in 1991, India became a $1 trillion economy in 2007, $2 trillion in 2014, and in 2023 roughly sits at $3.7 trillion in size. Furthermore, India has ambitions to become a $10 trillion economy in 10 years, ultimately a developed nation by 2047. US has signaled its support to these inclusive growth ambitions. The ties are not limited to niceties or words only. There are people-to-people ties, with about 4 million people of Indian origin currently residing in the United States. 1.6 million out of these are visa holders. Most of this Indian diaspora is quite successful with average household earnings of over $123,000 per year, much higher than other immigrants. There are more than 200,000 Indian students studying in the US universities. With respect to trade, US goods and services trade with India was at $146 billion in 2019. It jumped to over $192 billion in 2022. And preliminary figures suggest the trade has increased by 7% to over $200 billion in financial year 2023. US has now overtaken China as India's largest trading partner. What about investment? India has seen a surge in foreign direct investment or FDI since 2014. In 2020-21, India received FDI of over $81 billion. With United States being the second largest source of FDI with $13 billion. But there are issues also. Russia-Ukraine war and the Western sanctions on Russia that ensued exposed some of the cracks within this India-US relationship. But both the countries have so far managed not to let these differences spill over to productive areas of cooperation. Now on to an American company. Let's look under the hood at Apple. Apple is a very interesting company. If you are employed at Apple or are a supplier to Apple, you know how valuable that relationship is. Why do I say that? Apple generates massive value for its stakeholders, be it employees, shareholders, suppliers, and so on. It is the world's largest company and America's most profitable one. Let's look at some numbers. Apple's market cap is over $2.6 trillion with a trailing PE ratio of 27.9, which means investors are willing to pay a premium to buy Apple stock. Why wouldn't they? If you look at the financials for 12 months ending on September 24th, 2022, Apple's total revenue came in at a whopping $394 billion. That's more than the entire Pakistan's economy. Low blow? Okay, that's almost the same as the GDP of one of the happiest countries, Denmark. Majority of this revenue came from iPhone sales at $205 billion with about 52% contribution. The rest came from wearables like Apple Watch and AirPods, then MacBooks, iPads, and finally services. Services comprise of Apple Music, Apple TV, iCloud, etc. Looking at costs, cost of sales, that is the total cost of manufacturing and selling a product or a service, made up the majority at 76% of the total expenditure. Apple spent or invested a significant amount in research and development at $26.3 billion. Again, just that amount is more than the entire defense budgets of some of the most powerful nations. The end result, Apple's net profit came in at almost $100 billion. As I said, massive value. Back to India. LPI and India's ranking. This story is related to international trade and shipping ports. I came across an interesting index that informs countries where they stand with regards to their performance on trade logistics. The World Bank maintains this index, which is called Logistics Performance Index or LPI, and LPI is available for 139 countries in total. Now LPI is based on two components, soft data and hard data. First, perception of logistics friendliness of a country by the global freight forwarders and express carriers, that is soft data, perception. Second, granular high frequency information collected by several data firms on maritime shipping, container tracking, postal activities and freight activities, that is hard data. LPI for a country ranges from a score of 1 to 5, higher the better, and the better a country ranks on this index, easier it is to trade with that particular country. Look at some of the leaders on this index, all of them rich and developed economies. Or are they rich and developed because they are easier to trade with? Let's come to India. In 2014, India ranked 54th on LPI, and now in 2023, India has jumped 16 places and ranks 38th. What changed? The government's policy interventions that began in 2015 are fructifying. India began investing in trade-related soft and hard infrastructure connecting port gateways on both coasts to the economic poles in the hinterland. NICDC, Logistics Data Services Limited, started applying radio frequency identification tags to containers, enabling end-to-end tracking of the supply chain. As a result, for example, in the eastern port of Visakhapatnam, with the introduction of cargo tracking, the dwell time fell from 32.4 days in 2015 to 5.3 days in 2019. Dwell time is how long a container or cargo waits before being loaded onto a vessel, or how long a container or cargo waits before being unloaded from a vessel onto a port. The lower the wait time, the better. For Indian ports overall, between May and October 2022, the average dwell time improved further to just 3 days. Same as that in Singapore, better than in the US at 7 days and Germany at 10 days. No wonder India's LPI is improving, and the progress should continue as long as such policies are being implemented. To sum it up, India-US relationship appears to be a symbiotic one. Both parties seem to benefit from one another. Look at Apple for example. Apple just opened its first physical stores in India. Apple is bringing iPhone manufacturing to India. Apple will bring a culture of excellence in customer service and high-end manufacturing capabilities to India. Apple will also generate a significant value for its stakeholders from the Indian market. And as long as India continues to improve on its ease of doing trade, if you can say that, it qualifies as a preferred partner for other nations. I hope you found this week's wrap interesting. I'll speak with you again next week. Until then, take care.